I'm hitting that live button. I hit the live button, I should be live. Got YouTube going live, got my lights on, I got my notes pulled up here. I'm ready. I'm ready to live the dream. Welcome back. If you were with me for yesterday's live stream, so glad to have you back. If you weren't, you missed a pretty great train wreck of an opener because I was fighting with YouTube right before it launched, but that's okay. Yesterday, we talked all about an overview of live streaming, the tools you need, some of the wins, the pros and cons of live stream, things like that. And today I'm going to dive in a little bit deeper to the troubleshooting side about what happens when things go wrong, because the odds are very good that things are going to go wrong for your live stream. If they haven't yet, they will when you start. It comes with the territory. And I'm so excited to have you back with me in the editing cave today so that we can just launch right into that topic. So without further ado, let's get right into it. The first thing you need to recognize is that stuff will go wrong. It's part of the process with any content creation, and live is no difference. The only difference really about live is that when something goes wrong in your live, everybody else knows about it. So lean into that, be okay with it. Don't be afraid to laugh at yourself a little bit. You're going to need to, especially in the beginning, treat yourself with a lot of grace and kid gloves as you really wrap your head around what's happening and what all the different pieces are. There's a lot to think about, like we talked about yesterday. Just as a quick overview, yesterday we went over who should live stream, and we talked about the wins really being engaging with your tribe and that you don't need any post-production. So if those are the two things you're looking for, then go right ahead with live streaming, and if not, feel free to work on pre-recorded content. And then the other thing we went over is all the different tools, right? We said there are 5 pieces to every live stream puzzle, right? There's your inputs, like your camera or your microphone. I've got a lapel microphone on and a camera right there. So there's your inputs. Those inputs get sent to a switcher. The switcher decides which camera goes live, which things do we hear, those kinds of pieces. Your switcher sends a finished program feed to an encoder. Your encoder turns that program feed into a bunch of ones and zeros and beams it up to the internet so that all of your adoring fans can see what you have to say. Once it gets there, there is a distribution platform like Facebook or YouTube waiting with open arms to take your stream and send it out to the masses. And then finally, we have the endpoints where people are viewing this stream. If you're watching right now, you are one of my endpoints, and that endpoint might be a phone, it might be a desktop computer, it might be a TV, all sorts of different things. And so we need to keep all these pieces in mind when we craft our live stream. So here's an example signal chain, just to put all the pieces together for you. An example signal chain that's really simple could be using, I think I've got one here. Well, here, we can use this. I mean, an iPad is an example of almost the complete signal chain, right? Suppose your iPad is your input, and you use the Facebook app as your switcher and your encoder, so it decides what we see, which is just going to be the camera from our iPad, and we can switch from front to back, and then it sends that camera up to the internet. Then Facebook servers are our distribution platform, waiting for that feed to come from the app, and then the endpoint would be your phone or your computer or wherever you're watching the live stream. Another example is what I'm doing right now. So I've got this camera, it's my Nikon Z6 as an input. This is a microphone, it's the DR10L lav mic from Tascam, that's an input. Those things go to a software switcher called OBS that's loaded on my computer right here in front of me. From OBS, I use RTMP, which again we talked about in yesterday's live stream. If you want more details on that, basically it's a map that tells your stream where to go. So the RTMP tells it, okay, go to YouTube. And then YouTube is my distribution platform, sending that stream to all of you. With these things in mind, what do we do when something goes wrong while we're live? Well, the first thing we need to do is we need to identify the part of our signal chain that's affected. So if you're looking at the comments and people are saying, I can't hear you, then audio is the part of our signal chain that's affected. So we need to go back through our signal chain and look for anything that has to do with sound. So that's going to be either our audio inputs, or it's going to be in the switcher when we decide what sounds people hear. The other piece that often people forget about is the endpoint. It's possible that you have the volume muted and so you don't hear what I'm saying. Now I can already rule out a couple of my components even while I am troubleshooting before I've gotten to the process, right? I don't need to look at my encoder because whatever gets to my encoder just gets sent to the internet. So if you're seeing video and not hearing audio, I know that the encoder has nothing to do with it. So then we go through each of those pieces one at a time. And that's very important, by the way, one at a time, making sure, because it's really tempting to go in and just change all the settings really quick and see if that gets it to work. But if you do that, in the future, you'll have no idea what you did to fix it. So then the next time this problem happens, you'll have to change all the settings again, rather than figuring out which one is the actual problem. So going through one at a time and checking things like, okay, we know this has to do with audio. Is my microphone plugged in? Okay, the microphone is plugged in. Does the camera see sound? Like my audio goes into the camera and then the camera goes into the computer. So on the camera, do I have any sound? I might plug headphones into my camera and try and monitor that audio input. Okay, the camera is hearing sound. Let's see if the computer gets sound. So then I plug my headphones into my computer to see if there's sound there. All those different pieces. And the whole time, again, because you're live, lean into that. You can wave to people or do charades, or you can post something in the comments like, I'm working on it. Just, don't take yourself too seriously, because people who get frustrated and obnoxious are people who will lose engagement because nobody wants to be around that person who's having a temper tantrum. So you start swapping out your parts one at a time. If you haven't found a solution in like the first 60 seconds, start looking for alternatives. Okay, well, can I take the microphone out of my camera and plug it right into the computer? Do I need to switch to my computer's webcam and the built-in microphone? Do I need to use the camera's built-in microphone? These are all different options for audio that won't sound as good, but they'll be better than silence. So then we start looking at those alternatives and switch something in, and then most importantly, circle back to it as soon as your live stream is done and find a way to eliminate the problem in the future. The longer you wait before you come back to a problem like that, the fuzzier it's going to be in your mind when you finally get around to trying to solve it, which means that it's way more likely for that problem to happen again in the future. And that's just, it's not conducive to solving your problems, and it's not conducive to providing engaging live streams, because you don't want to get known as the person who has live stream problems, right? That's not a great way for your tribe to know you. Now, what if something goes wrong while you're not live? I recommend that you test your live stream setup in a private stream to yourself, like 2 days or 3 days before you stream if you have time, and then come back to it again and test it like mere minutes before you go live. And if you do that, then generally you will know what's going on before you go live to avoid some of those problems. So a good example of that is yesterday I had some issues with YouTube, where I had tested my stream in like a private stream to myself last weekend on Sunday. Then I tested it on Tuesday going to Facebook, and it worked both times. But yesterday, for whatever reason, when I started my stream to YouTube for the test, it got flagged for copyright. It was just like this, just a microphone and me talking. So it's not like I got flagged for using music I shouldn't or anything. YouTube just made a mistake, and sometimes those things happen. But because it happened early and I wasn't at 1:30 yet trying to go live, I was able to get in touch with YouTube and figure out how to work around the problem and move forward. And I ended up making a second stream and just going live with that one, and that worked just fine for me. So being able to go live and test what you're doing before you actually need it is a pretty big deal when it comes to all that stuff. Something that will really help moving forward is to make some checklists for yourself of the process of getting started. And I'm actually making some of these right now, which I will give away at my next live stream, which will be next Tuesday at 1:30 p.m., just like this one at 1:30 p.m., only on next Tuesday. I don't know why I said that two different ways. But next Tuesday at 1:30 p.m., three's a charm, right? I will be, giving those out for free, just putting a link in the description or whatever so that you can get those. But I'm making checklists and have made checklists that cover, okay, when I turn on a camera, what are the things I need to do? Because for the longest time, I always forgot to check my white balance. I got so frustrated that now I literally go through a checklist and I say, okay, have I pointed the camera at the thing? Have I made sure the subject is in focus? White balance. Making sure I get my sound stuff correct. Okay, is the talent mic'd? Is the microphone plugged into whatever my capture device is? All those different pieces. And the same thing for connecting your stream to your live stream. Have I checked it 30 minutes before I want to go live to make sure that it's going to connect? And those different pieces are what help to avoid a lot of those issues in the future for you, especially for a church where you're relying on volunteers, or a nonprofit that's relying on volunteers to get these put together. It's really helpful if you put together a checklist they can follow, because then they can also call you and say, hey, I'm trying to do step 4 on page 2, and then you're able to offer them support remotely, because otherwise, volunteers can get overwhelmed really easily, especially if they're not very tech savvy and they're willing to help and they're great and they have the right heart for the job, but maybe not the right experience. This is a good way for you to be able to support them and provide them with the support that they need as they get things running for you. So checklists, good. Checklists, thumbs up. Another thing to keep in mind is that Google is your best friend. It is very, very unlikely that you are having a problem that nobody else has had. So if you take for example, earlier today, I Googled my specific audio mixer, which is a Behringer XR18, will not connect to OBS, which is my streaming software, over USB when I plug my laptop charger in. And I found a solution for that problem just by Googling it. So if there are things that are that specific, the odds are good that someone has encountered your problem too. Especially like churches going live is something that lots of people are doing. So lots of people are running into trouble as they go live, figuring out the solution and then sharing that answer with people. There are also some great Facebook groups like the Church Sound Media Text group where, again, you can get lots of support with this, although right now they're pretty inundated with live stream questions, so you probably don't even need to ask. You just look, a couple pages down and there will be your answer. So, Google is your best friend, checklists are your best friend. You've got a lot of friends now, you're welcome. Another thing, testing way in advance, that's your friend. We talked about yesterday and how that stuff happens. And if there were people in the chat right now, I would take questions. But since there aren't, I'm going to say thanks for joining me in the editing cave, and I will be back Tuesday with another live stream about live streaming or something to do with video. I'm still working on where to go next from here, but I'm excited about it, and I hope you are having a great day. Enjoy your quarantine, friends.